so many physicians go into medicine because they want to help people. And, sometimes that means stepping away from the traditional pathways, research, basic science, and trying to do something on a larger scale. That's why I went down the physician entrepreneur route. That's why I'm building a company to help the largest possible number of women that I can reclaiming their heart health, and why I hope that new physicians who are training today consider some creative ways to have an impact to make a difference in the world as they start their journeys.
Welcome to Women Leaders on the Move, a Her C-Suite radio podcast. I am your host, Natalie Benamou, and every week I bring you inspirational stories and ideas that are going to help you with the arc of your career and your life. And today, that's going to be the topic we're going to be talking about. I'm also the founder of Her C-Suite, a powerful network community where we are meeting, engaging, and thriving in mastermind programs and events, as well as our board retreat. And we have a women's conference coming up, Thrive, in 2025 in June. I hope you'll check all of this out at hercsuite.com. I met today's guest through another podcast guest. I first learned about Dr. Simin Lee from Priya Bhathija, who is the CEO and founder of New Health. And I heard her, and subsequently she became a guest on a panel, Heart Care is the New Health Care. And from that, I became one of her patients for Systole Health. It has literally been life-changing for me, and I can't wait for you to hear this conversation. Dr. Lee is a board-certified cardiologist and behavioral scientist trained at the Harvard-affiliated Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts. In her experience as a physician, she has cared for many patients with obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, and other chronic conditions who yearn for comprehensive medical treatment that incorporates the power of social connection. In her free time, she runs marathons and enjoys every free minute with her husband and two sons. She also has a BA, MD, and MBA from Harvard University. I cannot wait for you to hear this conversation with Dr. Lee, so let's get started now. Dr. Lee, I'm so excited to welcome you to Women Leaders on the Move today. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
I've had so much fun getting to know you, and fun's a weird word to use for women's health, but I think it is applicable here. And seeing the trajectory of all the things that you're doing with your organization, and as a physician, you're a cardiologist, which is near and dear to my heart because I have cardiovascular disease. But for our listeners who don't know you, and this is the first time that they're hearing you, I want to hear a little bit about you and what got you into what you're doing now, because I'm sure there's really interesting facets to that story.
Oh, thank you again for having me. And yeah, I just really respect what you are building and the audience that you've assembled here. So happy to introduce myself. As Natalie mentioned, Dr. Lee. I am based in Boston, born and raised actually. And my story, I grew up in a big physician family. I had two physician parents, and they were, despite being busy, of course, very fulfilled. And so because of just seeing the direct impact that they were having on their patients' lives and the satisfaction that they derived from that, I was very drawn to medicine from a ridiculously early age. There's some picture, in a scrapbook somewhere of me in a little doctor's costume when I'm just a toddler. So I had that inkling early on. But because also as their careers evolved and just growing up and starting to read and become more aware of the world and everything, I started to realize that there was this whole bigger picture, our healthcare system, beyond just what happens in the patient doctor relationship. So I thought, gosh, it would be helpful to have some kind of skill set for taking that on, and learned about such a thing as an MD MBA program. Relatively new at the time, but they were popping up and, getting more and more students applying to them. And it essentially, it combines the training of both business and medicine together. So I thought that seemed like a great skill set to have. I was very lucky to get into the one at Harvard. And then during the MBA part, I was stunned. I had no idea what a startup was. I thought I thought they all turned into Facebook. I thought that they, to do a startup was actually selling out, as it were. But, Harvard was really emphasizing entrepreneurship, the science of entrepreneurship, the teamwork involved, the impact you could have. And it was very clear that just, if you were really thoughtful and rigorous about it, if you had an excellent team, that you could achieve something much bigger than the average physician's able to do in his or her own career. So I, filed that away. I wasn't going to come all that way to not be a physician. And then I went on to my training residency first and then cardiology. I started cardiology in 2019, just months before the COVID pandemic started. I also just months before I delivered my first son. So that was a very big year for everybody. And, during that transitional time when COVID set in, and then in the months after, it was such a shock, to the system. And a lot of people feel like, attribute some of our biggest healthcare problems to COVID, but others say really it just sort of exposed. It was a shock that exposed the inadequacies and weaknesses of the fragility of our healthcare system. And I certainly felt like I got a front row seat to that. I mean, I'll never forget seeing the first women patients come back to my clinic for in-person care, and these were women that I had known for a while because I had done my residency at the Brigham too. And I had a bunch of patients that had followed me from primary care to cardiology. And, several of them, I didn't recognize them when we reconnected. They'd gained so much weight. They looked different. They had shortness of breath. They had ankle swelling, heart failure, coronary artery disease. They were just different people. And when I heard how hard it was for them to get in 6 months, 9 months, 12-month wait, it was, obviously painful as their physician, but also very upsetting and made me kind of want to explore ways to address that access challenge, particularly for women who tend to be really underserved when it comes to cardiovascular medicine. We know there are significant rates of underdiagnosis and under-optimization of the risk factors, under-treatment, not to mention sort of, lower rates of inclusion in clinical trials, the research front. So, wanted to do something about it. And that's what led me to think, is it through research? So many of my peers do that, of a career as an academic physician. But ultimately, I wanted to be a little more pragmatic. And when I came across this model called group care, shared medical appointments, it occurred to me that it was a way to help one physician help more patients, to bring them together in a way that can be very supportive and community driven, and help them actually get a grip and feel like they're in the driver's seat of their own health. So I saw the model. It was being grown a little bit within our health system, but I also saw that it was really hard to expand within a health system. And that's when the light bulb went off that maybe I go in a different direction and try to build a company around this to maximize its impact. And it was a very tough decision. There weren't a lot of people around me at the time, who've gone down that path that I could look to and try to study the example of. But no risk, no reward. I took the plunge. I joined a program at Harvard Business School after my training was over to help me, help support me, give me time, the salary. I had two kids at that point, and you need to put food on the table and everything, and allowed me to start building the early team and the early offering at what we ended up calling Systole. So that's my journey in a nutshell. But I'm so excited to talk more with you about this. I know we have talked about it in the background, and hopefully go into things that we never really got to get into the details on.
Well, we had the opportunity, and I will have it in the show notes. You were on a panel, and for women's heart health, and so I believe it's called "Heart Care is the New Self Care," and so I will definitely have that in the show notes so people can hear what you have to say there. But I got the chance to personally experience this program, and it is life changing. And so I want every woman who's listening, and we have a lot that listen to this show, you have to take your heart health seriously. Hypertension is the silent killer. Nobody talks about it. You don't even know. I didn't know that I had it. I was even seeing doctors, and they were dismissing my high blood pressure. I was in the 160s, and they were like, "You're just nervous." And I'm like, "I'm really not nervous here. Not that high." I used to be 90 over 70. So for me to be sitting here at 160, I don't think I'm nervous anymore. I think there's something going on. And so when you came and said, "Hey, I've got this program," oh, I'm all in. I want to try this out. And now I'm the super fan. I can't get enough of it. And what's so life changing is this idea of group care, because as a cardiac patient, you don't have anyone else to ask, what is it like? What are your symptoms?
Hmm.
And it's been very humbling for me because my whole family had cardiovascular disease. And everyone's dead from it. And so I kept saying, like, genetically, I'm predisposed to these things. And so hearing other women's stories, it also made me realize I'm actually in pretty good shape, except for this one thing that I can figure out.
Yes.
Early on, I think it was in your first session, you were asking everyone in that group, "Do you snore?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I snore. What does that have to do with anything?" Can you share why that's so important for heart health?
So, well, first of all, we just loved our time with you and we love getting to see you every time. And anytime I can, give back even more to patients, it just warms my heart. So, that snoring question, what is a cardiologist doing asking about snoring? I mean, it tickles me every time I do ask and I see patients like facial expressions or their spouse's facial expressions. It just, never ceases to amuse me. The reason that we ask about it is because we're trying to uncover whether there might be undiagnosed obstructive sleep apnea. I think there's growing awareness about obstructive sleep apnea, but it's still very, very underdiagnosed. And it matters a lot for heart health, as it turns out. So, when you have sleep apnea, you basically suddenly stop breathing at night when you're sleeping. And sometimes, oftentimes, this is very much linked to obesity, and the prevalence has risen with the obesity epidemic. There's excess, fatty tissue on the chest, on the neck, and it physically weighs down the chest and the airway, closing the airway abruptly and causing this enormous stress response. Blood pressure goes up, heart rate goes up, inflammation goes up, clotability goes up. So it leads to a lot of things downstream that we sometimes are perplexed by, like, why does this person have high blood pressure we can't get a grip on? Why does this younger person have atrial fibrillation, heart attacks, heart failure, stroke? So it really is linked to a lot of major cardiovascular issues and is one of the first things I think of when someone has excess weight or any of those conditions, particularly hypertension. It's a big cause of hypertension. But, we also have patients who are not extremely overweight and who just have something going on with their nose or their sort of oral passage, the anatomy, just the way they were born and the way they're shaped, that does still put them in this bucket of suddenly not breathing at night. And snoring is kind of the best way to get a sense of it. There are other questions that we ask too, are you sleepy during the daytime? Are you having to take naps? But snoring is definitely a great first pass. And every time this sort of comes to light at Sicily, we feel really grateful because, yeah, as you may go into with treatment, and the treatment can take different forms. We sometimes see dramatic effects. Blood pressure goes down or the heart rate slows down. There's not as much atrial fibrillation. So it's a very rewarding, unexpected thing to dig into as a cardiologist. And we love being able to expand that. There's only so many cardiologists that around half of the US lives in a county that doesn't have good access to a cardiologist. And even I got a wager that, a good chunk of cardiologists weren't necessarily trained to ask about this. One of my mentors was religious about it, so I got that training, but not everyone does. So it's not something that people really have access to, a physician who will ask and suspect it. So, we feel lucky that we can provide that access and in some cases make some dramatic changes to help the patient.
Yeah, I'm going to share now my dramatic change because I was waking up every day with high blood pressure. And I kept asking, why is it so high in the morning? I don't understand. I just was supposed to be sleeping and it was really high. And once I found out that I do have sleep apnea, I was stopping breathing 15 times an hour, which is on the higher end or mid end,
Moderate, yeah.
moderate, just at the right amount so I could wear a mouth guard and not the CPAP. So I was like right at the threshold. But I will share my today reading because I want people to think about this, that they should know where their numbers are. And that's something I learned from you is that 120 over 80 is the gold standard. Most people don't even think that. They're like, if you're at 130, I've had so many doctors tell me, I'm not worried if you're at 130. And I'm like, no, Dr. Lee says you're supposed to not be over 130. So today I was at 111 over 75 when I woke up. And I stopped taking I had a second medication that I was taking at night to get it so that I could wake up with low blood pressure. And I attribute this to asking the right questions, which is what Her Health X is all about. My nonprofit, it's really closing that gap in those questions. And that's what Sistole is doing. And that's what I think is so novel because you combine, and I'd love for you to talk about this, education with check ins, with an app, but talk about that system.
What a great feeling to just, take a pill bottle, an entire pill in your routine out of the equation. That's one of the most rewarding things I think for us is to see the med list trim rather than grow. So, we're so happy about your case. But yes, so Sicily, as I was mentioning before, we use this group care model. It's a model that's been around for a long time. We think its earliest roots might have been in the 1970s, but it's often, pinpointed to 1990 that it really started to take shape. And what it entails is usually a dyad, a physician working along somebody like, in our case, a health coach, but in other cases, it might be a registered dietitian or, a nurse educator, somebody supportive like that. And together that dyad sees a group of patients rather than, just one at a time. And it's usually for a longer period of time than the very rushed, all too infrequent, like, challenging appointments one on one that we've become used to, 15 minutes once a year. These appointments are more like 60 minutes, at least. In some settings, I've seen them, scheduled for much longer, 90 or 120 minutes, depending on the population. And what's nice about it is, just as you said, it provides the time and the space to create a little magic. You can do some education. And we always share that, our philosophy around the education is we want to convey everything we think women deserve to know, but rarely are exposed to in a standard doctor's visit because there just isn't time. And then we follow that up by some coach driven goal setting, because everyone has goals that they're trying to work towards, things that they're trying to get a little bit better at, whether it's movement, whether it's, nutrition, whether it's sleep, or whether it's just tracking consistently and getting more consistent about medication. And so our coach helps everyone create a little accountability for themselves and for each other by saying that goal out loud, by comparing that to their goal from the previous week, and then keeps in touch with them between visits through our platform that you referenced to help people just feel supported along the journey. And then there's the medical phase. So part one, education, part two, coaching, part three, medical care or care navigation. And in that chapter, I, as the physician, check in with each patient. It's very funny when I describe this to my colleagues. I say it feels a little like speed dating sometimes, like your actual time with each patient is very targeted in the visit, but it really adds up over 6 visits and then maintenance visits that you're just getting so much more time with the patient in aggregate. And we're not trying to boil the ocean in those huddles. We're trying to deal with the biggest priority. Sometimes that's like something very pressing on the patient's mind. Sometimes it's something that I am really trying to drive and bring to their attention because I know it's going to really help reduce their risk and optimize the chances that they live a longer, happier, healthier life. So, we're doing little things like blood pressure, cholesterol, weight. And if I am in a state where I can prescribe for them, then I'm prescribing the medications. And if not, I'm giving them the tools to, go back to their care team and say, listen, can we talk about this medication? Can we talk about this test? Or I heard that this might be helpful or worth considering in my case. What do you think? So we just try to really provide that comprehensive support. And honestly, like I love doing one-on-one care. And that is how we start everything. We start with a one-on-one onboarding so we can really go through someone's medical history and their goals. But we're living in a time where there's just not enough hands on deck. There just are not. If you took every nurse practitioner and physician's assistant in the world and every physician in the world, it still wouldn't be enough to provide the care that patients need. So this is a little bit of a different texture of care. And, it might not be comfortable to every physician out there, but for those who can take it on, it's a really rewarding way of just trying to help more people while also helping them help each other. And, I'll never forget in your group, you bonding with another patient. You happen to be in same region, same state, and just helping each other out and everything. So we've had others that totally different walks of life and they start praying for each other and sharing that with each other. So it has been so rewarding and we're just focused on bringing it to as many women as we can.
And I think that's the novel idea is that the scale model, and that's where the entrepreneur journey starts. So we've been talking about women's health. If anyone has hypertension and you have questions about Systole and you want to know more, I am the biggest champion and cheerleader for it. So reach out to me. I'd love to share the story in more detail. So I'll have the information in the notes. But the entrepreneur journey is part of this, right? And you just had a really big thing happen with that. So share what happened and how that came about.
Yes, you're referring to our fundraising. So, all companies in healthcare are usually dealing with the challenge that anything in healthcare takes a long time to get done. So, for a virtual care company, the things you need to get done are you need to get licensed in other states. You need to get then recognized by health plans in each of those states, state by state. It's a very laborious process that my partner in crime, whom you know, Lauren McConnell, our chief operating officer, is an expert at. And even with someone like Lauren's expertise, it just takes time. And so, because of that, companies often need capital. They need some kind of resources to buy them that time and support them keeping the lights on, making progress, refining what they do and providing value to their patients or their customers while they wait for some of those things to happen. And so for us, we knew that we were not going to be able to, without charging an arm and a leg to our patients, which as a physician does not feel right. We were not going to be able to bootstrap, just internally support our operations with, money that we are earning from the care that we're providing until we were able to take insurance. So we decided we were going to have to raise money from investors. No small feat. Right now, for startups, the type of investors that you usually bring on are called venture capitalists. And, there's a lot of advantages with partnering with them in that they often have, great networks. They've seen a million startups come and go. They have a sense for, a little bit of a sense of what it takes to unlock success. So that can be very valuable. But we also know that for female led companies, women led companies, only 2% of all venture dollars go to those female founders. So we were a little bit, we knew it would be an uphill battle, not to mention just the general uncertainty in the market, the general challenges with getting any kind of funding for anybody, even, male or co ed teams. But we were very fortunate. We found a fantastic set of investors. Our lead investor is called Bench Strength, and they came out of a very large fund called General Catalyst that does a lot of work in healthcare and brought that expertise. And we also had angel investment from folks like Tom Lee, who founded One Medical. So it was very helpful to just have them at our backs, gave us the time that we need to know that we're doing a really good job for our patients and to set us up to make a play for scale, like you mentioned. We're reaching out and engaging with patients coming to us in the consumer setting. They're just coming directly to us. But in order to maximize our impact, what we're trying to do and what we're in the early phases of succeeding at doing is partnering up with health systems so that we can take care of their patients for them, and help them expand their capacity without making them, go through all the time and the cost of hiring, or, as we've heard, shortening appointments or just routinely double booking, compromising on care or compromising on the financial health. So that's our big focus this year is how can we bring Systole to even more patients through partnership? And the investment, really helps give us the time and space to do that.
I want to share something that happened over Thanksgiving. So, you did this really great challenge for all the patients that were participating. And for those of you who are listening, you're a marathoner. So, you were out in Central Park. It was pouring down rain, and you're out there, you were running, and you had your camera, and you were sending this positive message to all of us in your community. And it meant so much. And I just want to just say that those things do have big impact because when we see you doing it, we know that we can do it too. So, I really appreciated that.
I mean, we and our team feel the same way about the patients. I mean, I do think you're right that community is at the core. Women really understand community, even the, introverts among us. I think we understand the power of community in a very unique way, or we experience it uniquely. And so, we derive as much inspiration and motivation from hearing our patients talk about their triumphs, be they big or small, and collectively, we're getting better sleep, more sleep, we're taking better care of ourselves, we're getting our movement in. No one's perfect and there are good days and bad days, but it's very bi-directional. We are, blown away by the work that our patients are doing, how they're supporting each other. I mean, that's also a big, big part of what we get out of this too. So it's very touching of you. I mean, my God, I was just completely wet in that video, but I also, you're right. I mean, here all of us were trying to do a little self-care and supporting of each other during what is classically a very busy and sometimes stressful time, sometimes emotional time, the holidays. And it was so organic. I was thinking about everyone as I was running, felt like the perfect moment to just send a little message.
Which it had a ripple effect. I know I'm not the only patient who felt that, and I think when you see a doctor, and especially a cardiologist that is showing that kind of level of care, it has incredible, incredible way of making a difference for so many people, and the women that know you and the patients that don't know you yet, but I hope they sign up when they hear this show. If you are looking forward, you said that one of the things you're focused on is the health systems. Where do you see yourself in a year from now with like, what would success look like?
This whole year, that is our focus, is just partnering with as many health systems or practices as we can. We're really exploring both. Some of them might, move along fast enough that we'll be taking new patients through them. But I anticipate that a year from now, success would look like we are having a massive influx of patients through those partnerships, and that we're really kicking those, the real work is beginning. We're doing the group care, we're billing through our partners, helping them become financially healthier, helping them get time back to see more new patients, trim down those wait times that we've heard from so many of our patients are still this many years out of COVID, like painful and unthinkable, many months long. So I think that's what in a year, that's what that looks like. And in a few years, our hope is we have enough data about what we do and how well it works that we're able to approach even larger incumbents like the health plans to see if not just for a few hundred or a few thousand patients, but for tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of patients, can we help? Can we move the needle and start changing the game when it comes to heart disease, the number one killer of women, killing more women than all cancers combined, really changing that story. So easier said than done, but every single interaction that we have with people like you gives us the energy and the inspiration we need to get it done.
Well, I'm so grateful to the care that I've had with you, to knowing you. And if people want to connect with Sister and you, where should they go?
The easiest is our website, sistolehealth.com. There's a great, very easy way to email us and, even just directly schedule a call with us. We love taking those calls. My favorite thing is just listening and hearing someone's story, what they're struggling with, because there's almost always some way that is very obvious that we can be helpful. And that's what we love doing. So I think website, booking a call with us is the easiest thing. We're on social media as well. We have to be in 2025, and we love to be. It's such a nice organic way to meet people. So we're on Instagram at Systole Health and TikTok as Systole MD. So we look forward to meeting any listener and friend of yours will become a friend of ours as well. And once again, it's just been such a pleasure to know you and to be on your show and involved in any of the amazing programming and awareness spreading that you're doing.
Thank you so much for being on the show today. I had so much fun. And I know that sounds, again, we're talking women's heart health, but heart health can be fun. I love the conversation. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for spending your time with us today. This topic is so important to me personally because I have cardiovascular disease and I believe that it matters. Your heart health matters more than ever. Take good care of yourself and visit Systole Health to learn all the signs and everything that you need. Their program is transformational and I know it will help you and hopefully all the women in your life. Keep shining your light bright. The world needs you.